The ringing in my ears drowned out everything else as Uncle Jamie's words hung in the air. "Nicole's just not cut out for this kind of work," he said, his voice carrying across the kitchen to where I sat hunched over my criminal justice textbooks. My pencil snapped between my fingers, lead shattering across the page of carefully documented evidence. "She's too soft, too emotional. Look at her. She can barely keep her eyes open." My mother nodded, sliding another check across the table to my cousin Kevin, who had just flunked out of his second university, but was somehow still the family's golden boy. The check, $5,000 for education expenses, came into focus as my vision narrowed to a pinpoint, the same amount I'd been denied for my academy application fees last month. "Kevin has that natural leadership quality," my mother said. "That's what you need in law enforcement." My name is Nicole. I'm 42 and a federal marshal. This is the story of how I destroyed the family that destroyed others. I'd applied to every federal program I could find: DEA, FBI, U.S. Marshal Service. Each application was a secret I kept from family dinners where they debated whether I'd make it through another semester or if I should just find a nice boy and settle down. Kevin leaned back in his chair, beer already in hand at 6 p.m. "Besides, Nicole's got that whole bleeding heart thing going on, always crying about some sob story. You can't be effective if you're worried about hurting people's feelings." "That's exactly right," Jamie agreed, swirling expensive scotch in a crystal glass that cost more than my textbooks. "This family's got a reputation to maintain. We don't need—" He gestured vaguely in my direction. "We don't need weakness associated with our name." The weakness he was referring to was my habit of questioning why their construction sites had such high injury rates, why workers always seemed to disappear after accidents, why the books never quite balanced when I helped with basic accounting during summer breaks. The weakness was caring that people were getting hurt. I'd stopped asking questions after Jamie pulled me aside and explained very gently that my college tuition money could disappear just as easily as it had appeared. "Family businesses require family loyalty, Nicole. You understand that, right?" I understood perfectly. I also understood that every federal academy I'd applied to had waitlisted me pending character references I couldn't provide without destroying my own investigation that had already begun in those accounting ledgers. Something shifted inside me as I watched them laugh, planning Kevin's future while dismissing mine. The strange metallic taste in my mouth wasn't just rage. It was resolve, crystallizing into something harder, something they'd never see coming. I stood up, my chair scraping against the tile with a sound that made them all turn. "I need some air," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. "Don't be so sensitive," my mother called after me. "We're just being realistic about your prospects." Outside, the cool night air did nothing to calm the fire spreading through my chest. My phone vibrated, a reply to an application I'd submitted months ago through a secure FBI tip line after documenting discrepancies in the company books. "Ms. Sullivan, we'd like to discuss your observations about Oakhurst Construction's financial irregularities. Please call this secure number immediately." I looked back at the house where my family continued their dinner, continued planning which workers to exploit next, which safety regulations to ignore, which lives were disposable. I made the call. "This is Nicole Sullivan. I believe my family's construction company is laundering money and covering up workplace deaths." 2 years later, the U.S. Marshals Training Academy in Glencoe, Georgia, was everything my family thought I was too weak to handle. 6 months of tactical training, firearms proficiency, legal procedure, and psychological evaluation. I graduated second in my class. My family thought I was in rehab. I'd let them believe it, let them spread stories about my drug problem and mental breakdown, let them shake their heads sadly when people asked about Jamie Sullivan's niece, who couldn't get her life together. The federal task force had arranged for a counselor to contact my mother, explaining that I needed complete isolation from family triggers during my recovery. My monthly progress reports, actually written by DEA handlers, kept the family updated just enough to maintain the cover story without requiring actual contact. It was easier than explaining why I couldn't contact them, why I'd needed to completely disappear from their world to do what needed to be done. The truth was, I'd been recruited specifically because of my family connections, not despite them, because of them. The Marshal Service had been tracking Oakhurst construction for years, watching the pattern of workplace deaths, the suspicious financial transfers, the way workers vanished after filing injury claims. They needed someone on the inside, someone with natural access, someone the family trusted, someone they thought was too weak to be a threat. I spent 3 years building the case, working my way through the ranks of federal service while my family believed I was bouncing between rehab facilities and dead-end jobs. Every commendation I received, every successful operation I led, every life I saved, all of it was preparation for the day I would finally bring down Oakhurst construction and the family that had built an empire on broken bodies. When I finally returned to their world, it wasn't as Nicole the disappointment. It was as Deputy U.S. Marshal Sullivan, operating undercover at family functions, gathering evidence, wearing a wire while Uncle Jamie boasted about bribing inspectors, and Kevin joked about expendable Mexicans. The recording device felt heavy against my ribs as I sat at the annual company Christmas party, watching Jamie give his traditional speech about family values and building America. 17 people had died on their work sites in the past decade, 17 families destroyed so Uncle Jamie could buy another yacht. "We've had our best year yet," Jamie announced, champagne glass raised high, "and next year will be even better now that we've secured the Westridge development contract." I knew exactly how they'd secured that contract, by underbidding competitors using labor costs that assumed no safety equipment and below minimum wage pay. I also knew about the betting pool the executives ran on which site would have the next fatality. I'd found the betting slips in Jamie's office safe 3 months earlier when I'd stopped by to drop off Christmas gifts while his secretary let me wait in his office. "I'd like to propose a toast," Jamie continued, his gold watch catching the light. "To family, the foundation of everything we do." The room raised their glasses. I raised mine too, but not to family, to justice. In my purse, the final piece of evidence I needed. Internal memos directing foremen to remove scaffolding supports to save costs, with full knowledge of the risks. 3 months later, the federal courthouse in downtown Los Angeles was packed. Media, federal agents, defense attorneys, and in the back rows, my family. All of them. I hadn't seen most of them in nearly 5 years, not since I'd begun building the case as an undercover marshal. Uncle Jamie had aged badly. Too much rich food and stress, probably from running a criminal empire. Kevin looked exactly the same, which somehow made it worse. My mother sat between them, wearing the same expression of disapproving concern she'd perfected during my teenage years. They didn't recognize me at first. Years of tactical training had changed more than just my posture. I was 42 years old, wearing a perfectly tailored federal uniform with insignia they couldn't read from the back of the courtroom. My hair was shorter, professional, my shoulders broader from years of physical training, my face harder from seeing things they couldn't imagine. But mostly I was invisible to them because they'd never really seen me in the first place. The prosecution calls Deputy U.S. Marshal Nicole Elizabeth Sullivan to the stand. The silence was immediate and absolute. I stood, my marshal's badge visible on my belt, my service weapon properly holstered, my years of federal service evident in every detail of my bearing. The bailiff swore me in while my family stared in shocked silence. "Marshal Sullivan," the prosecutor began, "please state your current position and length of service." "I am a Deputy U.S. Marshal with the Los Angeles District, currently assigned to the Fugitive Task Force. I have served with the U.S. Marshal Service for 5 years. Prior to that, I completed 2 years with the DEA's Undercover Operations Division." Behind me, someone gasped, probably my mother. "And what is your relationship to the defendants?" "James Sullivan is my uncle. Kevin Sullivan is my cousin. The Oakhurst Construction Company is my family's business, or was, until this investigation began." "Marshal Sullivan, please explain to the court how this investigation began." I turned slightly, just enough to see my family's faces in my peripheral vision. Uncle Jamie had gone pale. Kevin was frantically whispering to their attorney. My mother looked like she was about to faint. 5 years ago, I was approached by a joint federal task force investigating workplace deaths and human trafficking in the construction industry. They needed an agent with natural access to Oakhurst Construction's internal operations, someone the family would trust, someone they would never suspect. And why would they never suspect you? Because they thought I was a drug addict who dropped out of community college 5 years ago. The courtroom stirred. In the back, I heard my mother make a choking sound. Marshall Sullivan, during those 5 years, what was your actual career progression? I recited my service record like a military citation, which in many ways it was. 2 years DEA undercover, 3 years U.S. Marshal Service, specialized training in human trafficking, financial crimes, and organized crime. Commendations for operations in 3 states, current assignment as lead deputy on the West Coast Fugitive Task Force. And during this time, did you maintain contact with your family? No contact. My assignment required complete separation to maintain operational security. What did your family believe happened to you? They were told I'd had a mental breakdown related to drug abuse and was in long-term rehabilitation. They were encouraged not to contact me. It was brutal testimony, laying out 5 years of lies and investigation. But it was also necessary. Every detail of their financial crimes, every recorded conversation, every witness account of worker intimidation and safety violations. All of it flowing through my testimony, like water through a broken dam. The defense attorney was a shark in an expensive suit, but he had nothing to work with. How do you cross-examine someone who spent 5 years documenting crimes with federal surveillance equipment? Marshall Sullivan, he tried. Isn't it true that you've harbored resentment against your family for years? That this investigation is really about personal revenge? I looked at him steadily. Sir, I've spent 5 years of my life protecting people like the workers your clients harmed. Revenge would have been much simpler and much less paperwork. The courtroom laughed despite itself. No further questions. They were waiting for me outside the courtroom, all of them. My mother reached me first, her face streaming with tears. Nikki, I don't understand. You told everyone I was a drug addict, I said quietly, for 5 years. You let them think I was weak, worthless, a disappointment to the family name. We were told. She was stammering, reaching for me like I was still 19 and might need comfort. I stepped back, not harshly, but definitively. Uncle Jamie pushed forward, his face red with rage. You destroyed us, your own family. We raised you. We dash. You harmed 17 people, I said. You threatened families with deportation so they wouldn't report safety violations. You ran betting pools on which worker would be injured next. He went silent. Kevin was next, still trying to find an angle. Nikki, come on. Family is family. We can work this out. Deputy U.S. Marshal Sullivan, I corrected. And no, we can't work this out. You're under federal indictment for racketeering, conspiracy, and accessory to endangering human life. But you're our family. No, I said, and my voice carried the authority of 5 years of federal service. I'm a law enforcement officer. You're criminals. The family relationship ended the moment you chose to profit from people's suffering. My mother was still crying, still reaching for some version of the broken girl they'd invented to explain my absence. But we love you. We've always loved you. You love the idea of me as a failure, I said. It made you feel better about your choices. The real me, the one who spent 5 years protecting people you were harming. You never wanted to know her. I turned to leave, then stopped. For what it's worth, you were right about one thing. I was too soft for your kind of work. I could never have lived with 17 people's injuries on my hands. 6 months later, the sentences were everything the families deserved. Jamie got 25 to life. Kevin got 15 years. My mother, who had no direct involvement in the company operations, received probation and community service. The construction company was liquidated with proceeds going to victim compensation. The 17 families I'd helped relocate sent me a card on the anniversary of the arrests. Their children were thriving in school. The adults had found legitimate work with companies that valued their lives and safety. I never saw my biological family again. They wrote letters from prison. Jamie's full of rage, Kevin's full of self-pity, my mother's full of guilt and regret. After completing her community service, she moved to Arizona to live with her sister, occasionally sending holiday cards that I never answered. I didn't answer them. Some betrayals are too fundamental to forgive, not because of what was done, but because of what it reveals about who people really are when they think no one is watching. I'd spent 5 years watching. The real victory wasn't the convictions or the sentences. It wasn't even the justice for the families who'd lost everything to my family's greed. The real victory was walking out of that courthouse as exactly who I'd always been. Someone who protected people instead of exploiting them. Someone who chose the harder path because it was the right path. Someone who'd rather be underestimated and effective than respected and complicit. My family had spent 5 years telling everyone I wasn't strong enough for their world. They were absolutely right. I was strong enough for something much better. Before you go, here's a quick bonus for sticking around. If you love learning and growing like I do, you need to try audiobooks. I've got an exclusive deal with Audible. Your first month is completely free. That's access to over 500,000 titles, zero cost to you. All the details are waiting in the description. Don't miss this one.